like to welcome John Groleau from Chicago, Illinois. He is the proud father of 4 children, and he had 3 children in school at the same time, which I think created him to create this book, The Parents' College Survival Guide. John, welcome.
Thank you, Kelly.
You know, John, in your book, you talk about the Titanic and how it relates to college planning. Could you share with us your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. The Titanic is one of my favorite stories in movies. And in the real story, the Titanic, the lookouts didn't see the iceberg until it was a half-mile away. And you know, when you have a ship that big, moving that fast, nothing's going to stop a disaster from happening. But if the Titanic was back in Liverpool and they knew where the iceberg was, all they'd have to do is change the direction a fraction of a degree. They'd have missed it by miles. College planning is much the same way. Every family that's thinking about college planning is on their own Titanic cruise. The question is, how far away are you from your college iceberg? Because the further away you are, the less drastic a course change you're going to have to make to avoid a disaster like that.
Sure, it makes a lot of sense. You know, also in your book, when I read it, I realized that, you know, I had done quite a few things wrong myself in planning for my kids. And I have 2 kids in school at the same time, and I have an 8th grader, which, by the way, thank you. I hired you a while ago to be my coach, mentor for my son going forward. Quote from Liverpool. But could you share with us what are some of the top mistakes that parents make in actually planning for the college career of their kids?
Absolutely. I think the first one is waiting too long. I think Scott would agree. Most of the families that come in our offices are spring of junior year.
Absolutely.
And at that point, you know, they haven't hit the panic button yet, but they're pretty close. I really love working with 8th graders because we have time to make the kids marketable, because different colleges are looking for different things. Make sure they're on track. Make sure the things like honors classes or AP classes. So the more time we have, the better shot we can find more money for them when they head off to college. A second one would be thinking that because they make too much money, they're not going to get any financial aid. And that's so far from the truth, because we had 2 of our families last year that they made over $200,000 a year. Both their kids got full rides. So it's making sure we understand the distinction between merit aid and need-based aid. Another one would be, I think, assuming that just because they go to a great school, like a big name school, a Big Ten school, Ivy League school, that they're going to get a job when they get out. They had an article in the New York Times a couple months ago that graduates from top Ivy League schools, 2/3 of the graduates are unemployed by the time they graduate.
Wow.
So it's really about making sure that we find, you know, that these kids are going to be a big fish in whatever pond they're swimming in. The name of the school does not mean they're going to get a job when they get out.
So, and that leads me to another point. I know you talked about it in your book, and in talking with you and Scott, you talk extensively about helping the student thrive, not just survive.
Absolutely. You know, when I was, many moons ago, when I was in college, I changed my major 7 times at 6 different colleges.
You were very flexible back in those days.
Yeah, not something I'm real proud of, but it was definitely, I'm really passionate about making sure that my 4 kids and the students we work with, the mantra that I want them to have is 1 major, 1 college, 4 years off the family payroll. So in order to make that happen, we want to find the career paths they're really going to fall in love with. Find the schools they're going to fall in love with. I mean, if you're going to spend $40,000, $50,000, even $60,000 a year, don't you want them to fall in love with the school they're going to? So thriving is much more important than just surviving.
John, wouldn't you agree? It's so unfortunate that most families realize after the fact whether or not the student's going to thrive or just survive at a school, and invariably that ends up costing them more money by changing colleges, changing campuses, things of that nature.
Absolutely. Statistically, we found that 37% of college freshmen don't go back sophomore year. A third transfer schools. 57% take up to 6 years to get a bachelor's degree. 44% never graduate at all. So we really want to make sure that when our kids get off to school, they really get putting their best foot forward.
Yeah, those are some scary numbers. I'll tell you some other numbers that were scary. Actually, kind of eye-opening and scary at the same time. You shared with me, and Scott did too, that it's sometimes less expensive to go to a private school that actually looks like it's more expensive. Could you explain how that works?
Absolutely. All 4 of my kids went to private schools, and it cost me about $3,000 more per year to send all 3 of them that were in school at the same time, $3,000 more per year to send all of them to a private school than it would to send one of them to a public school. So part of that is that private schools, the funding is better, they're not relying on state or federal governments as much, their endowment funds, I mean, some of these private schools, their endowment funds are larger than third world countries' GDP. And they're also, we found that when we're trying to negotiate financial awards, they're much more flexible. So because of that, more money available, greater flexibility, it can be less expensive. And it doesn't mean that the private school is better than the public school. It's just that most people think that a public school is cheaper, and that's not necessarily true.
Kelly, we find that, if I might, we find all the time that families focus on what we call the sticker price, the reported cost of the school, and as a result of that, they eliminate so many schools that could end up costing them less money, provide their child a better education, get them a greater chance of getting a job and getting out in 4 years, and they never even give those schools an opportunity.
I know I've seen articles recently, even on Yahoo, on the internet, about the endowments of some of these schools are so large that the average incoming freshman can get $250,000 to $500,000, and it still wouldn't even take half the interest they're making on their endowment funds. You talk about this whole process, and I know that when I started this process a couple years ago with my kids, I kind of did it myself, and I'm really sorry that I did. Why wouldn't parents? Why would you not recommend that they do it themselves versus bringing somebody like yourself, an expert in the field, in?
That's a great question. Well, back in the 70s when I was in college, pretty much you get a bachelor's degree, you're fine, you get a job. We're finding that the market is becoming much more specialized. Employers, 3 of my kids are engineers. They didn't, where my daughter's working, the Army Corps of Engineers, they wanted an ocean engineer, not a civil engineer, an ocean engineer. So we're finding that the fields are more specialized. The rules are changing constantly. I mean, Scott, don't you find that just the financial planning rules are changing, the financial aid rules are changing,
tax
laws, admissions requirements, everything's changing. And it's kind of like, look in the sports world. In the last 3 Olympic Games, only 1 athlete did not have a coach. He didn't win anything. So look at all your athletes. All your athletes have coaches. Even most of the successful business people I know, they all have coaches. So wouldn't you want your student to have a coach to really make sure they thrive through this process?
Kelly, the stakes are just too high today. The cost increasing at 2 to 3 times normal inflation. To make a mistake in the college process will simply cost a family too much money. Can't afford to do it on your own.
Right. I guess that's the difference between being off by a degree or 2 and hitting that iceberg and sinking and making it and thriving. Well, John, hey, I want to thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it. For those that are interested in John's book, Parents College Survival Guide, or to find out about his college success coaching program, go to CPR's website, collegeplanningrelief.com.